You didn't notice it at first. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't arrive with a slammed door, a raised voice, or a clear moment you could point to and say, that's when everything changed. It started the way most real change starts, quietly, almost politely, as if it didn't want to disturb the life you were already living. A shorter reply than usual, a longer pause before you answered. The decision to let a comment slide instead of biting back. The strange new habit of leaving things unsaid. Not because you were afraid, and not because you didn't have the words, but because you didn't feel the need to spend your energy proving a point. At first, it felt unfamiliar, like driving a road you've known for years, but noticing a different route exists and wondering when it appeared. You caught yourself staying calm in moments that once would have triggered you. You stopped chasing the last word. You stopped explaining your intentions to people, determined to misunderstand you. And the most surprising part wasn't that you changed, it was that your body felt better when you did. Your chest didn't tighten as often. Your jaw didn't clench. Your mind didn't replay conversations on a loop. You felt a kind of space inside yourself that you couldn't quite name. Not emptiness, not numbness, space, a quiet relief. The world kept moving the way it always has, loud, demanding, full of opinions. But you felt like you were watching it from a different distance, not detached like you didn't care, but detached like you finally understood what was worth caring about. Like you had stopped paying a tax on every small thing that tried to pull your attention. And when you really pay attention, you realize this didn't happen overnight. It's been building for years. A slow recalibration, a private course correction, a man learning, often the hard way, where his energy goes and what it costs him. One day, you look up and you realize the noise is gone. Not because life got easier, not because people got kinder, but because you stopped volunteering your peace to every person and every situation that demanded it. You found the quiet space where your self-respect lives, and you decided to protect it. Think back to who you used to be. The version of you that felt obligated to explain himself. The man who believed that if he could just say it the right way, calm enough, clear enough, reasonable enough, then people would finally understand. And if they understood, things would be fair. And if things were fair, you could relax. But life doesn't work like that. Some people don't want clarity. They want control. Some people don't want to understand you. They want to measure you, test you, provoke you, or keep you in a role that benefits them. And you can spend years trying to earn peace from people who profit from your confusion. So you learned. You learned that being understood is not a requirement for being stable. You learned that not every accusation deserves a defense. You learned that you can be a good man without being available for every emotional demand placed on you. Your old self chased approval in small ways. Maybe not obviously. Maybe you weren't desperate. Maybe you weren't begging. But you cared too much about being seen as fair, being seen as calm, being seen as reliable. You carried responsibility like it was proof of character. And it is, up to a point. The problem is, some people take your reliability as a renewable resource. They treat your patience like a public utility. They treat your presence like it's guaranteed. And if you never change the terms, you'll eventually resent the very strength that once made you proud. Now notice the difference in you. You respond less. Not because you're bitter, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally realize your energy is not endless. You speak when it matters. You let silence do its work. You don't rush to fill every gap with explanations. You observe more than you react. And you've started recognizing patterns in people's behavior without letting those patterns hijack your nervous system. That's what maturity looks like when it's real. It isn't flashy. It doesn't announce itself. It's a man sitting still while someone else tries to drag him into a storm. You don't feel broken. This isn't loss. It's a shift that makes life simpler. Not easy, but simpler. Decisions become cleaner. Your mind is less crowded. You stop negotiating with yourself about whether you should tolerate certain things. You stop bargaining for respect. You notice something else too. Moments of quiet no longer feel empty. They feel like breathing room. Like the first time in years, your mind isn't performing for an audience that wasn't even watching. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming deliberate. It's about letting go of the patterns that drained you while keeping the parts of you that actually matter. Your integrity, your care, your discipline, your sense of responsibility. You didn't lose your heart. You just stopped handing it to people who don't know what to do with it. And if you're honest, there's a quiet pride in that. Not arrogance, pride. The kind that comes from finally living like your time matters. Other people notice the change and they label it because that's what people do when they can't understand the deeper story. They call you distant. They call you colder. They say you've changed like it's an insult. They ask what's wrong. They ask why you don't talk as much, why you don't seem like yourself, but they're only seeing the surface. They don't see the years behind the shift. They don't see what it cost you to become calmer. They don't see the situations you survived by learning to stay composed. They don't see the nights you lay awake thinking about whether you were doing enough, whether you were failing someone, whether you were the problem because you cared so much. They don't see that what looks like distance is often self-protection. What looks like coldness is often discipline. What looks like withdrawal is often wisdom. This isn't weakness. It isn't indifference in the sense of having no feeling. It's selective engagement. It's emotional economy. It's the decision to stop paying interest on other people's dysfunction. And if a part of you feels uneasy about it, if you worry you're turning into someone you didn't plan to be, that's normal. Good men often fear becoming hard because they've seen what hardness can do. They've seen men turn bitter, turn cruel, turn closed off. But what you're building isn't bitterness, it's balance. You are not becoming less human. You are becoming less manipulable. And soon you'll see why this shift happens and why it's often necessary. Because the shift didn't come from one big event. It didn't come from a single betrayal or one explosive argument. It came from accumulation, from repetition, from patterns that didn't change even when you tried to address them calmly. It came from the small moments, a harsh word from someone close that got brushed off like it didn't matter, a conversation where your concerns were ignored, the feeling of being taken for granted again, the effort you put in that disappeared into the air like it never happened. In relationships, it might have been the partner who expected your strength but resented your needs. The partner who relied on you but didn't respect you. The partner who made you feel like your presence was only valuable when you were producing something: attention, money, stability, solutions. In friendships, it might have been the guys who called when they needed something and went silent when you were the one carrying weight. The ones who joked at your expense a little too often. The ones who expected loyalty but treated it like a one-way street. In family dynamics, it might have been constant pressure to play a role you outgrew. The subtle guilt, the expectation that you stay available, stay agreeable, stay responsible for other people's comfort. The old scripts, that's just how we are. Don't make it a big deal. You're too sensitive. At work, it might have been the unrecognized effort, the late nights, the extra attention to detail, the way you carried others quietly so the machine kept moving. And then someone else got credit. Or worse, no one noticed at all. None of these moments were catastrophic by themselves. They were just small leaks. But enough leaks will sink a ship. And over time, your system started adjusting. Your heart learned that constant giving without return isn't noble. It's unsustainable. Your mind learned that explanation doesn't fix a person committed to misunderstanding you. Your body learned that constant tension is a tax you can't afford forever. So your reactions changed, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally understood the cost of caring without boundaries. And then it happened. Not with drama, not with a speech, not with revenge. One day you realized you were tired. Not the tired that sleep fixes. Not the tired from a long week. A deeper tired. A tired that lives in your bones. A tired of repeating yourself. A tired of negotiating for basic respect. A tired of being the adult in every room. You stopped arguing the way you used to. You stopped trying to fix every situation. You stopped chasing people who never valued your effort. And what replaced the chasing wasn't emptiness, it was relief. Because letting go of the need to fix, explain, and chase doesn't create a void. It creates space. Space to be yourself. Space to breathe. Space to see clearly. This is where the shift becomes powerful. When you understand what's happening inside you. Your brain is protecting you. The nervous system learns. It adapts. It builds patterns. If you keep touching a hot stove, eventually you don't need to be told to stop. You recoil before you even think. Emotional patterns work the same way. When you spend years overextending, over-explaining, overreacting, your system eventually says, enough, not as a punishment, as a survival strategy. You begin to conserve. You begin to delay your response. You begin to choose. You begin to stop feeding situations that only get stronger when you react to them. That's not numbness. That's control. At first, every small slight shakes you. Every comment creates a ripple. You feel everything, and you respond quickly because you're trying to protect your worth. But as your foundation gets stronger, the same triggers don't knock you off balance. The emotions still exist, but they don't drive the vehicle. They sit in the passenger seat instead of grabbing the steering wheel. This is what people don't understand when they call you cold. They mistake regulation for emptiness. They confuse restraint with indifference. They don't realize you're not less alive. You're less reactive. You're calibrated. And once you understand that, the shift stops feeling like something is wrong with you. You realize your mind and heart are aligning to protect what matters. Your time, your focus, your peace. The calm you feel isn't accidental. It's earned. Then people start to notice. Friends, family, co-workers. They sense something's different. Some ask if you're upset. Others try to read your face, looking for the old cues. They're used to you being accessible. They're used to your emotional availability. They're used to you bending, explaining, smoothing things over. And now you don't. They want a reason. They want a label. But the truth is, you don't have a single reason to offer because this isn't about one person. You're not punishing anyone. You're not playing games. You've simply stopped filling roles that drained you. And here is one of the most important moments in a man's growth. Realizing that someone else's confusion is not your emergency. Their discomfort does not require your performance. You can be present without entertaining chaos. You can be kind without being weak. You can be firm without being cruel. You can say less and mean more. This is where your presence starts to carry weight. Not because you're louder, you're quieter, but your quiet has structure now. It has boundaries. It has self respect behind it. You're not giving people the remote control to your nervous system anymore. That changes the way the world interacts with you. Some people stop testing you because they don't get the reaction they used to. Some people grow more respectful because they sense you're no longer negotiating your dignity. Some people become irritated because your calm is no longer useful to them. They preferred you when you were easier to manipulate. You're not more aggressive. You're just less available. And there's strength in that. Not ego. Strength. The kind that can walk away without slamming the door. When someone tries to overstep, you respond thoughtfully, or sometimes not at all, without guilt and without an essay explaining why. That restraint isn't coldness, it's agency. It's the ability to prioritize what matters without being dragged into unnecessary conflict. And as you live like this, life begins to feel lighter. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped bleeding attention into people and problems that don't deserve it. Your energy returns to you. That is a kind of freedom most men don't experience until they've lost years to the opposite. Then something unexpected happens. People notice your absence. The ones who took your presence for granted start reaching out. Messages come in. Calls appear. Hey, you've been quiet. Everything good? Where you been? Sometimes it's genuine. Sometimes it's curiosity. Sometimes it's discomfort. Because the balance changed. When you were always available, your presence felt guaranteed. When you step back, people feel the loss of access. And here's the distinction. Often, they don't miss you as much as they miss what you provided. Your time, your attention, your patience, your labor, your steadiness. They miss the benefits. And learning that is important because it stops old patterns from sneaking back in. It helps you see the difference between real connection and convenience, between someone valuing you and someone valuing what you do for them. This is where you gain clarity. You start noticing intention sooner. You can feel the energy people bring before they even speak. You can sense who is genuine and who is performing, who wants connection and who wants control, who brings peace and who brings complication. You trust more slowly now, not out of paranoia, out of experience. You watch actions. You watch consistency. You pay attention to whether someone respects your no without trying to punish you for it. You notice whether they show up when it costs them something, not only when it benefits them. And with that discernment comes choice. You walk away sooner from situations that drain you. You disengage from interactions that feel manipulative, disrespectful, or empty. You don't do it with drama. You do it with calm because you understand something most men learn late. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. Boundaries stop being walls built from anger. They become guidelines built from self-respect. They show you where to invest your attention and where to step back. This growth doesn't make you distant. It makes you grounded. It doesn't shut you down. It aligns your energy with what deserves it. Now, here's a reality people don't like to mention. This shift can come with a new kind of loneliness. Not the sharp, desperate loneliness, a quieter loneliness. The kind that comes when you stop entertaining what never satisfied you anyway. Small talk loses its appeal. Gossip feels like cheap food, filling for a moment, empty afterward. Crowds can feel distant, even when you're in the middle of them. Your phone can go silent, and you don't rush to fix it. At first, that can feel strange because you're used to noise. You're used to being needed. But you begin to realize solitude isn't a deficit, it's a reset. Silence isn't emptiness, it's clarity. Being alone doesn't make you weak, it makes you honest. It teaches you to be steady without an audience. It teaches you that you don't need constant interaction to feel real. And that matters because a man who can be alone without falling apart is much harder to manipulate. He doesn't chase connection out of desperation. He chooses connection out of alignment. Then comes a moment many men experience, but rarely describe. You realize the man you used to be is gone, not destroyed, not lost, transformed. The version of you that constantly tried to please, constantly tried to explain, constantly tried to hold everything together. That man did his job. He helped you survive. He helped you build. He helped you learn. But he cannot lead your life forever. And when you see that clearly, there can be a subtle grief. Not dramatic, not self-pity, a quiet recognition that a chapter ended. You mourn it with respect. You acknowledge that your former self served a purpose, even if he carried too much. You recognize the good intentions behind the old patterns, but you also see the cost. And you accept that holding on to that version now would keep you tied to roles and expectations that don't fit anymore. And when you let him go, something new takes shape. Peace becomes your default more often. Not because life stopped testing you, but because you stopped being easy to disrupt. You stopped tolerating what drains you. You stopped giving access just because it's expected. Your boundaries become natural. You don't announce them. You live them. Purpose starts to feel different too. It's no longer about earning validation through exhaustion. It becomes about building a life you can respect, a life that reflects your values, a life where your time is spent on things that make you stronger, wiser, and more present. Your decisions become calmer. You stop seeking permission to be yourself. You act with intention, not obligation. And the internal rewards are quiet but profound. A steadier mind, a clearer heart, a sense that you're finally living in alignment with yourself. And that's the point. This isn't you checking out. This is you waking up. You care less about the wrong things, so you can care more about the right ones. You stop bleeding attention into what drains you, so your energy can finally build something. And if you're listening closely, you can feel it. You're not broken. You're not lost. You're becoming, slowly, deliberately. A man who protects his energy, honors his values, and builds a life that reflects what he actually believes. And once you reach that place, the noise doesn't disappear. It just stops owning you.